First, it was two of the region's biggest rivals, Iran and Saudi Arabia, reopening embassies, finalizing the China-brokered rapprochement. Then there's this rekindled hope that conflicts in Lebanon and Yemen, where Tehran and Riyadh-backed opposing sides, could be resolved sooner too. Then came news that Saudi Arabia is normalizing relations with Syria, which is arguably the most isolated Arab state in recent years. And as we speak, Syria's membership to the Arab League is restored after a 12-year-long suspension. Are we seeing history unfolding right in front of our eyes? Are we entering the Age of Great Detente in the Middle East? It's likely, and that would be great news. I mean, the region has had more than its fair share of wars and sufferings, and they've got to stop so that children, babies, will no longer have to flee their homes and separate from their parents due to internal displacement, so that the money for building rockets and grenades can go to building hospitals and schools. It is welcome news that Iran and Syria are coming out of their regional isolation. Did you know that Iran and Syria are the second and third most sanctioned countries in the world? I understand that there are some in Washington and Western capitals who still believe in maximum pressure techniques to effect change. But when can people learn that sanctions often punish innocent civilians, the very people the designers of sanctions claim to help? According to the World Health Organization, Syria could not get life-saving medicines for cancer patients because of US-led embargo. And Iran's president told me during an interview that Iran could not import vaccines for their COVID patients or medicines for children with lupus. Some experts believe that the US sanctions are pushing countries in the Middle East, especially Arab states, closer towards one another and closer to Beijing. Listen.
They don't want to be totally dependent on the United States because the United States is sanctioning one country after the next, and they're frightened. And President Biden has framed this Middle East conflict, the Ukrainian conflict, as democracies versus autocracies. And of course, all the Middle Eastern countries are looking to a China model. And so they're worried that eventually this could lead to the United States sanctioning them. And so they want to cover their bets and have reinsurance. And China is, of course, the leading power coming up in the world that can give them that reinsurance.
Let's talk about the role of China, which is often underappreciated. It's so convenient these days to pick up the Western narrative and accuse China of being a military threat and an expansionary power. But how many sovereign countries have China colonized in recent history? Can you name one? China uses its good offices with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, work quietly behind the scenes, and help bring about this détente. China is also reportedly using its good offices with other Arab states to encourage intra-Arab peace. While Washington used military operations to invade Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya to force regime change, China used diplomacy to secure rapprochement of Iran, Saudi Arabia, and potentially Syria, and respecting these countries' own social and cultural fabrics while doing so. Let's face it, this is Chinese diplomacy at its finest. Beijing is building a concrete case for its global security initiative and trying to prove that things like building a community with a shared future are not just lofty slogans. Some in Washington believe that the American-style democracy and value system were panacea to problems in the Middle East, thus the intervention and regime change. What about the rise of ISIS and the Kabul airport mess? China's approach is qualitatively different. Can you imagine China compelling Saudi Arabia or Iran to adopt Beijing's model of government, say to forcibly install a party committee or a politburo in Tehran or Riyadh as precondition for peace talks? At the end of the day, there needs to be a Middle East-led solution to Middle East problems. Of course, there are domestic constraints in many countries that require scrutiny and constructive help, but the last thing this region needs is external condescension, destructive interference, and power politics-induced proxy wars.